and then you'll fix it.
So, make sure my mic isn't on mute. Okay, so hello and welcome to today's episode. I'm so excited to introduce to you our guest today, who's also a certified EFT practitioner, my friend and colleague, Reverend Heather Sherrill. Heather is a non-denominational minister of walking prayer through the Center for Sacred Studies and the founder of Serene Intentions. Her passion is horses and assisting others along their life journey. She lives in Huron, Ohio. Please welcome Reverend Heather. Heather, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello, thank you for having me, Liz. It's an honor.
Oh, I'm so thrilled that you agreed to come and share a little bit about your expertise in tapping and your practice. And you tend to focus more on trauma. And tell us a little bit about your background first and why you chose to incorporate EFT into your healing practices, because you have a lot of healing practices already in your toolbox. Why was EFT appealing to you?
The main reason EFT was so appealing to me is because of all the science that is behind it, and that it just continues to grow with the science, and that the results are just remarkable time and time again. Every time I'm with a client, I'm just amazed of the results of what EFT brings.
I agree. There are so many transformations that happen in a 1-hour session that it's kind of mind-blowing what a little bit of tapping does and what comes up, and things that haven't been dealt with for years and years that surface when we do this work. So today, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about how to use tapping for a specific trauma. And Heather, I want to talk a little bit about the differences between physical and emotional trauma and the way they manifest in our bodies. Do you want to explain that to our listeners a little bit?
Sure. So physical and emotional traumas show up in our bodies in different ways, but a lot of times one of them leads to the other. We may have, as a young child, maybe you got hurt during a sporting event or outside on the playground or something happened, and the adults will certainly take care of you and treat your physical ailments. But, later in life, there may be this emotional situation around that you've carried with you. So we might take care of a physical, but it actually created an emotional and energetic block, but we never dealt with that.
Right.
But on the same side of that, something really emotional may happen to us. Like we know it's emotional, we're crying, we're upset, whatever the situation may be. And we think we get through it. And then down the road, we start having some kind of physical ailment in our body that no MRI or X-ray or blood test shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And so the emotional trauma can ultimately end up being a physical sign in your body, and it takes something like EFT to help move the energy around that emotional trauma to help with physical pain.
Yes, and Heather and I both have seen clients with both physical and emotional trauma, and have been able to help people through both of those specific things with tapping. And I remember having a client one time in my home office when I first started my practice where she had a frozen shoulder, and she'd been to every person she could have imagined. Her last stop was the physical therapist, who was also holistically trained a little bit. And he told her finally, when she was like, I give up, he said, you know what, I think you have some emotional trauma around this physical symptom that is manifesting in your body. So
Yes.
He actually suggested tapping to her. And I was seeing her daughter for something else. And she said, oh, can I come in? I just want to see what, transpires in one session. So we figured out that her son, who was her firstborn, was about ready to go off to college. And he had a lot of past, what am I trying to say? He had a lot of allergies as a child. He was very allergic to foods, sensitivities, all kinds of things. And she watched over him like a hawk. She never left him alone. And she was very overprotective of him. And then he was getting ready to go away to college. And we figured out that she just had this broken heart. She could not, she just felt so distraught that he was leaving. And so and she could actually feel it in her heart, which is connected. All these muscles are connected here, our heart to our shoulder to all of this. So we tapped a couple of rounds about her heart. She did a little bit of crying. We tapped again. And before she left, she could lift her shoulder, her arm above her head.
Yes.
So it was an emotional trauma that was physically keeping her stuck. So it's, we have those as they're pretty amazing, but it's a lot of what goes on in our practices. And Heather, I'm wondering if you can tell our listeners why you feel it's so important to heal past traumas.
Well, trauma is something that many of us don't even understand sometimes that we might have, right? Like
Right.
something happens
Mm-hmm.
and we don't look at it as like, oh my gosh, there was this trauma and it's going to be trapped in my body.
Right.
But anything that happens that makes us not feel good, big or small, I mean, energetically on many different layers in our body, it can be considered a trauma to our body.
Mm-hmm.
We are by nature fight or flight animals. Now we have fawn and freeze, but by nature we're fight or flight animals. And anytime that we have that fight or flight feeling come up in our body, potentially there's a trauma that occurred that happened somewhere in us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they can be in our mental, physical, emotional, or our energetic bodies. And if we don't recognize that in the moment and handle it in the moment, they're going to carry with us until we process them, clear them away, tap them out of our body, do some kind of modality, or otherwise they just stay harbored in these bodies in some layer somewhere.
That makes perfect sense. So I'm also curious to know of some client success stories that you can share where a trauma was really holding them back from something important that they wanted to move forward, but they just couldn't, and they didn't know why.
Well, I had a client who came to me for anxiety in a relationship situation that she had just ended with a significant other. She also had been in an abusive marriage, so there's plenty of trauma around all of that. But after we worked through a lot of those things, there was still this underlying, she wasn't good enough. So one of the things that would happen is she has a great family, awesome family, but she was always late.
Mm-hmm.
And so, she was the person that they wouldn't ask her to bring a dish because she wouldn't be there on time for dinner to start, right? She would always be late. And this was really getting to her as a mother. And she didn't like that feeling like there was something wrong with her or she just wasn't good enough anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just getting to her. So through lots of sessions, lots of questions, lots of navigating and listening to things she would say and taking the feedback. Because like her mom would always, say something throughout her lifetime about her arriving late.
Mm-hmm.
Like even on her birth, she was 2 weeks late.
Uh-huh.
And so for me, it was an automatic. I could see the big red flag to me of what was happening here.
Mm-hmm.
She actually arrived late on her birth, which created this pattern in herself throughout her entire life that she was always late.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kept feeding what she came here with, which, her and I on the levels that we're on, we see as something she came this lifetime to take care of. I'm very excited to say that after sessions working on this together, it went very quickly once we identified it. It didn't take us but a few rounds. This was months and months ago. She's now early. Her family still can't figure out how she's not late anymore. Every time she's early and on time, they just don't know what to do about it. But, when you think about a newborn arriving here, that's a big T trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Being stuck in the womb for extra time and all of that. And she still is like, she doesn't even remember that she was late anymore.
Right.
until she walks in and her family's like, what are you doing here already?
Right.
So that was pretty cool, I thought. And I had another client that was referred to me by another practitioner who had done an absolutely amazing job working with this client with panic attacks and anxiety. And this girl's anxiety was pretty disabling to her in many ways in her life. Like, she was a college student, she couldn't leave the house, get in a car and drive. And this practitioner worked really well with her anxiety and panic, but there was still this thing lingering. And one of the big problems was her sleep patterns. Like, she stays up all night and sleeps all day, which doesn't work in our today's world, right? Let's like, we have to go to college when they offer classes, not when they accommodate us. So after speaking with the practitioner and asking a few questions, it was very clear to me the big trauma that had happened. This girl had lived with an alcoholic, abusive father. And it was very clear to me that her trauma of not sleeping was staying up late till the house was quiet and safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so, being able to see that and work with her through that. And as soon as it was brought to the young lady's attention, it was like an immediate aha. Yeah, that's where my trauma is.
Mm-hmm.
She still doesn't sleep perfect, but at least it's not a fearful sleep.
Right. And that's the worst kind of sleep would be the least restful sleep would be a fearful kind of sleep, in my opinion. So I appreciate you sharing those. And those are really good examples of how tapping can work in with specific traumas. And you mentioned during those explanations about big T traumas. Can you explain a little about the differences between a big T trauma and a little T trauma?
Absolutely. A big T trauma is major. Car accidents, arriving late to your birth, losing a child, losing a parent, things that we almost just don't even know how we move through in life. Mm-hmm. But EFT does have the ability to help get us through those big T traumas. But then you have the little ones. Your third grade teacher embarrassed you in class because you said something when you were reading your story, and you created some story in your little third grade head about that, right? Mm-hmm. Or, you go to the grocery store and somebody walks out in front of you and you have to slam on your brakes and you're like, ah! And you're all scared for that moment, mm-hmm. right? That's more of a little T trauma.
Uh-huh.
But in the moment, you were still scared to death. You almost hit that person that you didn't see them, but you didn't run them over and you didn't hurt them. It was just a moment of,
right? Yes. Yeah. Your adrenaline goes up, and it is a fight, flight, or freeze moment.
Yeah.
And those little T traumas, especially for us highly sensitive people, and Heather knows about highly sensitive, and a little T trauma for a highly sensitive person those little T traumas build up so much over time, especially when you're highly sensitive, and your subconscious stores all this stuff. Your subconscious is really smart, but I feel like as a highly sensitive person, personally, you have to be aware of these little T traumas that can come for you. And just during your regular day, you could have a bunch of things that qualify to you with a highly sensitive personality as a little T trauma. So to be able to have tapping to clear these as they come up during your day, I mean, just like Heather said, if someone pulls out in front of you and you're, in the grocery store parking lot, and that was just really upsetting, to be able to tap right then and say, what, that was upsetting to me. I feel panicky and anxious and scared. And thank goodness I didn't hit that person or hurt anyone. But to be able to get over that, because you wouldn't believe the amount of people that I see, and they don't even have to be highly sensitive, but they hold on to these little T traumas for their entire lives. And it's almost sad to me that And I did too. Of course, I had plenty of little T traumas, but it's sad to me that that could have been avoided had you have known about EFT. And that's why with my kids, I feel like I'm so thankful that they have EFT. I can guide them. I mean, every day when we get in the car and I pick them up, when they get in my car after I pick them up from school, I say, "How was your day?" And my oldest is an HSP. So he lets loose in the car he gets in. He'll say, "Mom, so-and-so said this, and it was really upsetting." And I'll say, "Do you want to tap about that when we get home?" And, just to not have to carry these little T traumas with us for that long, is such a blessing to not have those pile up. And another question, Heather, that I have is, what would you say to people that they have held on to a big T trauma so long, and they are so good at keeping it in, that they are afraid to bring it back up because of what else might happen, like this avalanche of things. They're like the onion, they're starting to peel the layers. And what would you say to those people that are really scared to do this?
It happened. It's in your conscious, unconscious, or subconscious somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It is debilitating to you, even if you don't recognize it. It's scarier to hold on to it than it is to take care of it. Trauma in our body will deteriorate our physical health, our mental health, and our emotional health. If it happened and you haven't dealt with it, it will continue to affect you in some way. And potentially, even having the fear around it could create and attract similar situations.
That's the truth.
And so, if it happened, whatever it is, big or small, but you still remember it as a negative charge in your body or in your mind or in your heart, it is something that could be a trauma to take care of. And it could be so much gentler and simpler than you could even imagine, because that's part of what EFT does. It removes layers and layers. You could go to talk therapy for many, 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 many years and never get through what a session of EFT can do for you, with a practitioner guiding you and helping you through it, because we as the practitioner are there to hold space for you and support you. Because if you do decide to go through that trauma and work through it, and it gets to be a little too much, we as a practitioner know that for you. And we bring your suds down and we bring you to a safe place and we remind you that you're okay. It's scarier to keep it than it is to heal it.
Oh, I love that. That is so true. And it really is. And like Heather said, we are highly trained practitioners, and we never go anywhere that you're not ready to go. And we have ways that you won't find on YouTube that we are taught to help deal with these very big traumas in gentle ways. So it is probably, like you said, hanging on to it is way worse than dealing with it and letting that energy move through you to be able to transform into something positive that you don't have to carry. The weight that is lifted, that we can as practitioners visually see, that happens during sessions when someone has this shift in energy where they're free of this baggage that they've been carrying. It is transformational for the rest of their life. And like Heather said, it might only take a session to do that. And you'll never know unless you try. And I haven't had any clients that have had any negative effects from working on a trauma. So, I mean, there really isn't anything negative about doing it. It's just, you have to be ready. And that's another thing. I kind of put out there when I manifest or need to manifest clients, that I want the universe to bring me people that are ready to work and that I can help. And I'm
Yes.
sure that's the same with Heather as well, that we really do want to be able to work with people that are ready and willing to go to these places. And I'm wondering, maybe maybe Heather would lead us in a little tapping for those of you who might be afraid to do this work and go back and deal with past traumas. Would you be willing to do that with us, Heather? I can tap along with you.
I absolutely would be. And I'm going to use language a little bit different than some of what we use in just some other kinds of EFT, because I feel like when we're going to trauma, we may not be able to even say the words "I love" and "accept myself."
That's a good point.
Right. And so wording that comes through me sometimes is just a little bit different. So yeah. So let me think of someone here. Okay. So if you have something that you don't want to deal with, and you'd rather keep it under the rug or on the shelf or wherever you've chose to put it in a box, and it's okay in your storage unit hanging out there for a while, but it's starting to feel like it's time to do something about that. So we'll tap on the side of our hand. Yeah. And so even though there might be something I don't really want to deal with, maybe I don't even want to remember it exactly. Maybe someday I'll be ready and willing. And maybe someday it will be the time. And even though there might be this thing that I might not even remember, but I can feel it in my body. And it's uncomfortable, but I don't know what it is. But I am a human in this lifetime, on this journey. And in this moment, I'm watching this video for a reason. And I have to trust that. And even though there might be something I'm afraid of tapping back into, I trust that I'm on the right path. And maybe someday I'll be ready and willing. And I'm proud of myself for how well I am doing along my journey. Top of your head. There might be something there. Eyebrows, I can feel something. Mhm. Sides of your eyes. When the time comes, maybe I'll be ready. Under your eyes. I know there's something there. Mhm. Under your nose. I might only see a little bit of it. And maybe that's all I need to see. Under your lips. Maybe someday I'll be ready. Collarbones. I trust the process. Under your arms. I trust my body. Mhm. Top of your head. That I maybe even notice right now what I'm feeling. Eyebrows. That I remember to take a deep breath. Sides of your eyes. And be proud of myself. Under your eyes. Right here, right now. Under your nose. In this moment. Under your lips. That maybe someday. When I'm ready and willing. Collarbones, that I understand there's nothing to be afraid of. It already happened. Under your arms. Maybe someday. Sides of your hands. I know I'm not alone. There are people here to support me.
There are people here to support me.
Take a deep breath and just allow yourself to be.
Oh, that was amazing. That felt really good for me. I mean, I hope that anyone who joined in with that little tapping session with Heather and I felt a little bit of something there, even if you're not ready. Those words were they really are, they might have shifted something even then, just a little bit, where you're curious. Maybe you could do another round for yourself and say, I'm curious to know how it would feel to let go or to deal with this trauma. So I really feel like we've covered a little bit of what it's like to tap for a trauma, what it's like to store a trauma or even a small trauma for a lifetime, and how it impacts your daily life physically and emotionally, and that doing the little bit of work necessary is really beneficial in the long run. So I am so thankful that I've had Heather here to talk a little bit about trauma today. And Heather, before we wrap up, do you have any offers that you'd like to share with our listeners?
So as part of my practice, I offer a 10 to 15-minute intention session that is absolutely complimentary. You can schedule them on my website. And, sometimes just being heard and supported by somebody for even a few minutes can make a shift in your space. And also, never hesitate to reach out to somebody.
Yes.
Whether it's one of us, just somebody. You are not alone on this life journey. I'd be honored and grateful to assist you. I know Liz would be as well. But somebody, talk to the person at the gas station if you have to talk to somebody. Just don't be quiet.
Right. And Heather and I, even if we do connect, if Heather and I do connect with a listener and you're not the right fit for us, we both have people that we can refer you to, other practitioners that work with other specific things if it's something that we don't specifically feel comfortable working on you with. So you're, like she said, you're not alone. Talk to someone. Someone will, even when you feel like you are at your lowest, someone is willing to listen and support you. So I am also going to put Heather's information in our show notes section. Her website is sereneintentions.com and her Instagram is sereneintentions13. So I'd like to thank Heather for being here today and sharing her journey with us, and head to the show notes for her information, like I said. And thanks for listening today. We'll see you next time. And until then, keep tapping.